business practices, and fascinating individuals to get an insider view of how America works. 10 to 11 a.m. on America's Web Radio.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Good morning and welcome to America's Web Radio. And, as things would have it, sometimes you get the bear and sometimes the bear gets you. And I will take all the blame in the world for any confusion. But we're going to talk about something that's coming up, and this is near and dear to us, as a matter of fact. Military. And June the 27th, starting at 11 a.m., there's going to be a job fair downtown in Atlanta, and we've got Mr. Job Fair just walked into the office, and we're going to be talking to Mike and talking about the job fair that's going to be coming. And as many of you know, we've been offering a special to veterans that start businesses. And if you're a veteran and you've started a business within the past 12 months, America's Web Radio will give you 2 weeks worth of free advertising. So send the information. We've gotten some in, and we appreciate it. Send the information to GM, that's G as in George, M, General Manager at americaswebradio.com, and we'll fix you up with 2 weeks of advertising on America's Web Radio. With that being said, want to welcome Mike. Good morning. Yeah, that's it. Just get up about that close. That's good. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, this I'm sorry about a little bit of the mix-up earlier in the time, but let's get right into it and talk about the job fair and how important it is. And one of the things that I hadn't realized, well, why don't you give us the details, and then we'll talk about the spouses as well.
Sure, absolutely. So real excited to partner with DAV, Disabled American Veterans, for the DAV Recruit Military Job Fair tomorrow, being held at Mercedes Benz Stadium. We'll kick off at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, and that runs till about 3 o'clock. And we're expecting over 500 career seekers there, as well as over 80 clients. And those will be either small, medium, large businesses, opportunities for training, educators, nonprofits, government organizations. So it's a real great opportunity for any organization to connect with folks from to the veteran community.
Mike, you said tomorrow.
I'm sorry, Thursday.
Thursday,
I
yeah.
apologize.
June 27th, I'd hate everybody to show up and say, where's the table,
Correct, yeah. Thursday the 27th, yes, thank you.
And 11 a.m. and goes until 3 p.m. And you all do these all over the country.
That's correct. We're in about 68 to 69 different markets with over 120 events per year. And those are a combination of major metropolitan areas, New York, Los Angeles, Dallas, for example. But we do also have a number of events on base or on post at military installations, Fort Bragg, Joint Base Lewis McChord, Travis Air Force Base, for example. So, we tend to have our events on Thursdays, the physical events, and we also have about a dozen virtual career fairs as well. And those can have areas of emphasis either to a certain geographic part of the country or a certain operational bent, for example, operations or something related to transportation, for example.
What, I guess that's sort of the question anyway. How varied is it from high tech to low tech to all points in between?
Yeah, great question, and that's a fair statement. It is really across the spectrum. There are some organizations that are looking for part-time, contract, temporary work, others full-time, and we may see some small local organizations as well as some of your Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 organizations as well. There may be also organizations there that aren't necessarily looking to hire, although that's not very common. For example, DAV, Disabled American Veterans. They're a partner of ours, but they're not necessarily coming in looking to hire for themselves per se. But a reason why they've partnered with us is because they share a common mission where they want to connect America's veterans and family members with, meaningful and fulfilling employment opportunities. They assist veterans, and also as a way to get in front of this community to engage with those who may not be aware of benefits that they may be entitled to from their time in uniform. So they may not necessarily be looking for jobs, but it's a great way for them to outreach to this particular community.
Which is fantastic. And, I think we have I was in the military and fortunately was not hurt in any way, but other than some people may think I had brain damage or something. But other than that, people, you say veteran, and a lot of people have this image that they have to have been hit by an IED or they have to have lost a limb or something like that, which is obviously absolutely not true. And yet today in our market, the disabled American veteran or the disabled veteran can get a fine job. He may have lost the limb, but he didn't lose his head, he didn't lose his brains, he didn't lose his ability to think, and or she. And which brings up a point. How many, I'd like to ask, one, officers as compared to enlisted, and also men as compared to women. Do you have any data on that?
The traffic or the candidates that we see at our events tend to fall in line with the percentages of the United States military population as a whole, as well as our officer to enlisted ratio. Broad brushstrokes, about a quarter of our candidates tend to be officers, and roughly about 85% are male. So when you look at the demographic of people in our database that come to our events that we're placing for opportunities, they are fairly representative of the military population as a whole.
Which makes sense.
Sure.
Also, do you get what's the end of service, or when they're washed out or whatever? Can this be any veteran that comes to it? That like we were kidding about with our, if they've started a new business, we'll give them 2 weeks. I don't care if they come from the Civil War, as long as they have started a new business. So, how far back, generally speaking, as a just a thumbnail rule?
There's really no time frame for those who have worn the uniform before, and we see a number of people who are still active duty. They may come to these events as their first opportunity to really get an idea of hey, what's out there? What kind of employers are hiring? What kind of opportunities should I be thinking about? Because I may be up for orders in another year or two. In addition to spouses as well. One of the things that I think we're going to talk about here is the situation with military spouses. How that's a real untapped reservoir of talent. If you think about the certifications and the tangibles and the intangibles of what companies are looking for, but that community as well, for them to connect with employers or for opportunities through our services also.
One thing that has certainly changed is, well, several things have certainly changed. One is the input of, and I was at the end of the draft, and was very lucky. I was not, well, I was number 12. They had the lottery back then, actually. But, the role of the spouse, be it man or woman, has changed considerably, in that with the call up and more and more reservists over the past few years, wives were not expecting it, and husbands weren't expecting it, and so roles flip-flopped and changed, and the spouse that stays behind, they play as big a part as almost the person that's in the field, and it's tough duty, and I'm glad to see that. I wasn't aware until I read the information on y'all that you are including spouses, and I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I think what those who haven't served maybe don't realize is that it's not just the person who puts on the uniform every day and goes to work on base or on post that's actually serving. It's the family. They're survivors, their children as well. One of the things that I think that that we're seeing right now is there are a lot of efforts, and that there is a light on this particular community. And there are some advances in technology and some legislation that are really looking to cut through some of that bureaucracy and cut through some of that red tape to get these opportunities to spouses a little bit, hopefully a little bit easier than it may have been in the past.
What kind of relationship do you have with the Department of Defense?
So we have engagement with a lot of the stakeholders within the different branches of service, not only the DoD, but also the Department of Labor, the Soldier for Life program, the Marine for Life program. Bradley Morris Recruit Military is about 55% prior military, and we do have folks who are still serving. We have a couple of guys right now that are currently on orders.
Wow. And now how do they do that?
Well, we know ahead of time if they're in the Guard and their reserves that they're going to be out of pocket for a while. And one of the good things is that when you get a team that is very much familiar with wearing the uniform, we tend to cover down on whether it be clients or certain situations to ensure that while those folks are away, we're able to still take care of our customers, still take care of their clients. So we do a good job of planning that ahead of time, and we obviously fully support their mission in their desire to continue to serve.
I got to ask, how long has this been going on? And I have a reason for asking.
Our organization
and the job fairs.
Sure. So Bradley Morrison Recruit Military merged back in October of 2016. There were a lot of great operational synergies to combine, what we did, whether it be contingency services or digital products, things like the job fairs. So really, since 1991, our entity has been working with connecting military and veterans with clients. The job fairs really started in earnest, I would say, about 12 or so years or so ago. And it started, relatively small with maybe 10 or a dozen or so events during the year, and now there's, this upcoming weekend we have Washington D.C., Miami, as well as one in Atlanta. So
my goodness, you all must have a whale of a staff.
We're roughly about 140 employees across the country as a whole. But when it comes to the planning and the preparation, the relationships with the venues, and the outreach effort as far as clients and candidates, we consider ourselves pretty proud of us being able to do a pretty good job. So
well, it's got to be a continual situation of recruiting businesses, as well as making the military personnel aware that you all are there. The other thing I kept thinking about, in my opinion only, but I can't imagine success like you all have had 40 years ago, when we were relying basically, except for officers, basically relying on the draft, and quite frankly, a lot of the draftees weren't the brightest bulb in the box. But today, with our military, you've got some of the greatest potential in the world, probably. The military has, in my opinion, again, has taken a different view of the soldier and said, hey, maybe this guy can do more than march, and maybe this girl or this lady can do more than be pretty or whatever. And there's more and more training that has gone on, be it technical or be it even out at Fort Leonard Wood, engineering. And those guys come out of Leonard Wood, and they know what they're doing, and they can go into construction like never before. Am I off base on this?
No, you're very much in line with what we're seeing. So I've been in this business. I celebrated my 20-year anniversary with the firm just last week.
Should I be standing in salute or?
No. No.
I was a grunt personally.
Okay, great. Yeah, I was actually I was an artillery officer and spent most of my active duty time down in Fort Hood, Texas when I was in.
I know Fort Hood very well.
Yeah.
That was one of the my enjoyable 2-week vacations.
Okay.
And you all would pop flares at all hours of the night, and
well, it was a great place to train because you had a lot of room to maneuver, and a
lot of dirt to play with.
That's right. And as a as a lieutenant, the ability to take advantage of that. I didn't know anything else at the time, but being at Fort Hood was a great opportunity for me to to learn my craft, operations, learn how to lead, and this particular organization and what we're doing. I've seen the landscape kind of change when it comes to military and veteran recruiting, and how organizations have really come to recognize this as a place to find technical talent, leadership talent. And the numbers really bear it out. Unemployment rate among veterans has a 2 handle on it. It's lower than the already low unemployment rate for the general population at large.
Mike, I'm going to have to stop you. We've got to take a break. I'm running a little bit behind, so we'll be back with Mike right after this.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Hi, this is Ron Camacho, host of the Business Hour on America's Web Radio. If you'd like to hear an eclectic mix of great programs, from relationships with Dr. Ann Schubert to homegrown veggies, and from classic cars to the Constitution, we've got programs for discerning listeners at www.americaswebradio.com.
How do you say that last name again? Arsenault? Okay.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And welcome back to America's Web Radio, Dave's Pick Special Edition today. In fact, this is sort of going to be a floating type thing, situation. We've decided that when we have a break in the action or something comes up, well, then we're going to fill in with, it's when you own it, you can do it, and so we do. And we're having this is a very close to my heart show because I have all the respect in the world. Being, I guess people don't understand that haven't served that the military is probably the biggest fraternity and sorority in the world. And, I have a lot of Vietnam vet friends, and we're going to be starting a show on Vietnam, as a matter of fact, and with Vietnam veterans. And, they have something in common that I don't have. I didn't go to Vietnam, but, served during that period of time, and, got spit on as I went through the airport, just like everybody else did back then, and it's a shame. But we have a very close feeling for all military, and we have Mike Arsenault here, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
Well, got to do something right once in a while, and he's with Bradley Morris, and they're about to put on a job fair here in Atlanta on June the 27th, and we invite, if people haven't heard about it, If you're a veteran or on active duty, coming from Dobbins or Warner Robins or or Athens, naval base there, you're welcome to come. It starts at 11 a.m. and goes until 3 p.m. Now, Mike, is it only a one-day event for the job fair?
That's correct.
Now, if I get to I might give this up, all this fun, and go down and what does an individual have to bring to prove that he or she was in the military?
So you don't have to bring any DD-214s or active orders. What we'll do is what we encourage folks to do is ahead of time, in order to fully take advantage of the opportunity and be best prepared, is to get on our radar ahead of time and go ahead and register, so you get an idea of who's going to be there. And there are some steps you can take that if you put in your resume and your background, there may be some organizations that reach out to you ahead of time saying, hey, you have indicated you have this kind of background or this kind of training, so make sure you see us or come by our booth. But if you're unable to do all of that and you just basically walk up, we'll ask you what branch were you, what was your exiting rank, maybe a few other questions before you can come in and take advantage of the opportunity at the job fair.
I think what you all do is wonderful, and it's sort of like the moving wall. You all are sort of the moving job board. Many years ago, we had a company on that was in the business, but they were strictly on the internet, and the owner of the company unfortunately has passed away, but they were a very well-known job board, and whether you were in or out of the service, you could go on it and find out what was available and so forth. Now, what kind of follow-through is there with after whoever is there with, be it the veteran or be it the potential employer? Do you know what the follow-through afterwards is?
From the job fair itself?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. So after the job fair, a lot of the employers get access to the information on the different candidates for outreach. We really encourage the candidates to take business cards and take opportunities, or be persistent in the follow-up with whatever instructions a company might need you to do in order to conduct a formal interview, whether it be register on their website or get in their database. But it's important to note that the job fair, while that's a great event and it allows you to meet people face to face, there are a number of other services and products that if you're a veteran who, for example, is overseas, or we're not coming back to your location for another couple of months or so, for you to get that kind of education and exposure to opportunities with organizations that would value your time in the service, whether it be job postings, whether it be applying for positions online, or some of the other services and resources that we have accessible.
Now, is there any cost to come to the fair as far as the veteran is concerned?
No.
Other than parking?
Other than parking. Correct. No, there's no cost for veterans to come to our job fairs or to apply for positions or submit a resume or do take any of those other steps online.
Now again, you all will have businesses from all over the country, so if I'm in Atlanta and I come to the job fair, that doesn't mean I'm applying for an Atlanta job, correct? It could be in Dallas, it could be in Portland, Oregon, or any place else.
That's correct. At the Atlanta event, there will be a number of employers from the Atlanta metro and suburbs, but there's also a number of organizations that are looking throughout the region, and some others that are also nationwide.
Doing it sort of the opposite way, obviously the veteran has been somewhat screened before he walks through the door. How do you all screen your potential employers?
For those that are coming to the events, so when we have conversations with employers, we want to make sure that they're set up for success as well, and to make sure that this is going to be a viable engagement and time well spent for them. So the screening that we do is to ensure what kind of positions they're looking for, and what kind of timeline, what kind of locations, to make sure it's going to be something that's going to be worth their while. There may be, maybe the job fair may not necessarily be the optimal event for them to come to. There may be one other, a different way where we are able to assist them. But we want to make sure that they're set up for success as well. So those kinds of questions is what we'll answer ahead of time, so they get the right kind of exposure and engagement at the job fair.
And again, sort of a nasty question to ask, because you already didn't get a chance to talk prior, so if you know, you know. If you don't, just say, I don't know. But what's your success rate?
Well, for a job fair in and of itself, through our screening, every single employer that we have, we ask them through surveys how many offers that they intend to make as a direct result of that job fair. And if you look at the numbers from the survey responses that we have, on average, about 2.5 job offers per every client there are what's to be expected from an event. So by and large, the companies that attend are engaging with veterans. They are meeting candidates who are the right fit and intend to take that next step to whether it be a site visit and ultimately an offer phase. So from the survey process that we actually have for the ones that we get back, those numbers bear themselves out, that it tends to bear fruit for clients that attend.
The other question is, or another question is, I would be sort of like in White Christmas, what does a general do when there's no more need for a general, if you remember that. And so how old would you say the oldest person is that would come to the job fair?
Oh,
wash out.
Sure. Well, we see, like I said, we see folks from across the spectrum. We see people who are still on active duty, to those who have hung up the uniform years ago, and lots of folks in between, as well as like I said, spouses also. So I really couldn't tell you the demographics in that particular regard. But you'll find that there's a lot of active duty and a lot of veterans in the Atlanta area. So it's a pretty good place to have a couple events like these throughout the course of a year.
Do you have, and we talked about that, someone that wants to come to it or wants to apply and get involved with it, as far as the veteran is concerned, do you have any on your website? Is there any prep work that someone that's coming can do, or the 3-minute elevator speech, or what do you suggest someone that's interested in coming to the fair does?
Sure, great question. And there are resources online that we encourage folks take advantage of, so that they'll be able to get the most out of the actual job fair event. Whether it be, like you just said, what's your elevator pitch? What's your resume, how to write a resume if you're starting from scratch, and what a good solid document will look like. How to approach individuals, be more proactive as opposed to reactive. I always say dress for success. That's a very important,
My Levi's wouldn't work.
Well, it's a great first impression to ensure that you're dressed the part. If you think about it, what I tell folks is, if you're an employer and you're coming into an event that's going to be focused on military or focused on veterans, you're already going to have a certain sort of mind frame how that person's going to be squared away, well groomed, accountable, reliable, all those kinds of things. So make sure that how you appear, dress wise, really reinforces that. So whether it's on the website, there are emails that go out ahead of time by Chris Newsom, one of my colleagues, to ensure that everybody that's coming to an event that's pre-registered is in the right frame of mind. Some little things that they can do to ensure they're getting the most out of that event.
Not that people would do this, obviously, but once in a while you might have someone that might stretch the truth a little bit. So do you ask, or do you tell them that they should bring their degree with them, or just say, well, I graduated from Texas Tech and nobody believe you anyway? But no, do you suggest they bring a copy of their degree, or what evidence would you want that
Sure. Well, I think I would encourage folks bring their resume. I really don't think at that initial phase of really greeting or introduction or initial engagement that you would need any more documentation other than that initially. If you go to the second, third step with an organization, there might be a request for some more data or more information on you. But for the purpose of the event that we're having on Thursday, if you look right, you're in the right frame of mind, and you're bringing copies of your resume, I think that's sufficient for the job fair.
With that being said, we're here with Mark Arsenault, and he's with Bradley Morris, and I love this. Anything to help the military, I love, and we'll be back with him in just a moment.
Perhaps you are struggling to cope with the disease of addiction. If not, you probably know a family member or friend that needs help in battling the cravings and the personal and professional damage done by the effects of drugs or alcohol. Get a pen and paper and be ready to write down the following. These are the issues that the trained staff at the Atlanta Healing Center address and treat every day. Their doctors and counselors with over 40 years of practice in the field of addiction can treat the suffering individual in a thoughtful, compassionate, and experienced manner and guide him or her along the path to recovery. So call 770-696-9862 and speak to a knowledgeable staff member about how you or your loved one can be helped to enjoy a better and healthier life. More information is also available on the website at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Get your pen and paper ready. If there's a move in your near future, I'm here to tell you that the folks I used and now recommend is Around Town Movers. Timothy and the guys recently moved me, and I am and was totally satisfied with a sometimes not so fun experience moving. Call Timothy at 770-378-4708 and make it a good move and a good experience. Around Town Movers for that local or cross-country move. Timothy, Around Town Movers, in my opinion, are the best. That's Around Town Movers. Call them.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
And we're back on America's Web Radio and the special edition of David's Pick today. And I picked a gentleman. Actually, you all sort of picked me. I got an email from Shelby.
Yeah. Okay, yes.
And that led to Kelly, and that led to me screwing up, which I do frequently. But anyway, we've got Mike Arsenault in here from Bradley Morris, and we hope, quite frankly, to establish a relationship with you all as you all do the gypsy act of going from one town to the next. And no, I'm just teasing about that. But anyway, you all do a great job, and look forward to working with you in the different cities that you go to. You must feel like you're in the military, and do you ever get to see your family?
Yeah, so we have a team that actually goes and supports the different events throughout the country. And Bradley Morris Recruit Military is certainly an organization that is contemporary when you think about business in 2019. More than half of our employees actually work remote or work from home, and we're from New England all the way to California and places in between where our employees are. We have an office in Cincinnati, one in Norfolk, Virginia, but most of us do work remote. But we have a traveling team that actually goes in and executes the events and does after the planning and the preparation, liaison with places like Jerry Jones Stadium, AT&T in Dallas, Yankee Stadium in New York. A lot of the really neat venues where we get to host these events. And
I just want to add too that we're going to have Rob on Thursday.
Okay, great.
And you want to explain who Rob is?
Rob Arndt.
Yeah.
Rob Arndt is on our business development side. He's prior military as well. He's a Marine, and he's one of the best in the industry when it comes to engaging with companies and engaging with organizations. and really having them realize the value of hiring military and how those that can come into their organization can make a great impact. But also, what does that look like? How does that actually come into play, whether it's coming to a job fair or perhaps doing a contingency search where we need to go find that person, or perhaps it's job posting. Some of the broader programs or broader initiatives where he engages with companies as a whole. So you'll have a great conversation with him in a few days.
Well, it's a lot of folks that have never served have really, I have a real case against our Congress that I believe everybody that is going to give orders should have taken orders at one time or the other. And we can't say that about our congressmen or women now. They've never been there. They've never had a bullet go flying by their head or anything else. And the thing that an employer probably doesn't, if they haven't served, doesn't understand, but that's the mindset of the veteran and the mindset of, it doesn't matter which branch they've gone through, they will show up on time, mm-hmm. They will be properly dressed, and they will know how to take orders. And the military is one of the most fantastic institutions in the world. You said you'd gone to Notre Dame, which I have nothing against Notre Dame, other than you all don't know what those cow patties are. But anyway, I went to a completely different school. But I don't care what school you go to. You're ex-military, so you can get your doctorate in whatever you want to get it in, but you don't get the same degree that you get in the military. Would that be a fair statement?
Yeah, and very fair statement. And I'll share with you that I think companies are really recognizing that, where they do see the military as another one of those untapped reservoirs of talent. And a lot of the things that maybe you and I, who since we've worn the uniform, that we take for granted as far as being accountable, being responsible, right place, right time, right uniform, taking the initiative, being a good teammate, all those sorts of things. They're not shared by the general population in all instances. That's all well and good, and I think that if you also consider the fact that just the unbelievable training, and the opportunities that exist within the military. Now, nothing against nothing against some of the trade schools and the vocational schools that are out in in society, but what people I don't think realize, or employers don't realize, is that some of the great training, some of the great technical and leadership training that soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines receive, while on active duty, is very transferable and very attractive to companies in the private sector. So when you have...
I think, if I can interrupt you a second, that's sort of a two-way street of, like you said, the employer, if they haven't served, then they don't know what's really out there, and I don't know if they... Oh, well, let me ask you, and I was going to ask you a minute ago, are most of the people that are serving the businesses at the fairs, are they HR folks, or are they other people in the business?
That's a great question, and it's really a mix. There are folks there from human resources. There are business owners. We've had CEOs and COOs of organizations there as well as regional representatives. What we encourage our clients is to have folks there who basically understand, and if it's someone within an organization who has worn the uniform before and is familiar with the military, familiar with veteran hiring, they may be able to relate perhaps a little bit better, and understand maybe some of the specialties of some of the candidates or some of the job seekers that are there. But it really is a mix as far as what position does that person hold within a company, within an organization.
Do you think it's when I walk up and say I was an E5, or you walk up and say you were an 05, that they know the difference?
It depends. It really does depend. I've encountered many folks, with businesses out there who have never served, but have taken the time and done the study and basically understand perhaps the difference between an E5 and an O5 when it comes in terms of like training and responsibilities and maybe what that person's career track might look like, or if they have a particular discipline or from a particular specialty, having not worn the uniform before. So it does depend, and some of that, quite honestly, some of that kind of falls a little bit on the shoulders of the service member as well. We have to be able to be prepared to kind of, not speak in acronyms, or be able to relate and have conversations where we can kind of bridge that gap and explain in maybe less rigid military terms and more civilian, vernacular, exactly kind of where you've been, what you've done, what did your training look like, what were your responsibilities when you were, an avionics technician out at at Hunter Army Airfield or something to that extent. So there's a little bit on the shoulder of the veteran to make yourself approachable, to be able to communicate, because one of the things that an employer is going to look for is, hey, is this person going to be able to assimilate into my organization, not only do the job, but but also be a performer within my culture.
And a lot, just because you were enlisted doesn't mean that you weren't in a leadership position.
Absolutely.
And that's always important, particularly on a team type basis. If it's a business that likes or looks forward to the team leaders and somebody that'll take the bull by the horns, you might say, and go forward. So how many of these do you all do a year?
We have a little more than 120 of these events in 2019. Combination of both virtual as well as the on-the-ground physical events like we're having here in Atlanta on Thursday.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That keeps somebody busy.
Yeah, we have. It's a very hardworking, well-organized, and quite honestly, really talented group of people that are from the initial phone calls that we make, a year ahead of time to venues, to hammering out that planning and those orders and that process. To
who is the general at the top?
Our CEO is a gentleman by the name of Tim Best, another prior Army veteran. He was a pilot in Task Force 160th, the Special Operations Aviation Regiment based out of Fort Campbell, and he celebrated his 20-year anniversary just a couple months ago as well. So
this past Monday we just had two. In fact, one of them has written a book, a volume of books. Bruce Cowie and he was an Air Force officer, and a friend of mine introduced me to him, and Bob Moore, and Bruce has written about from Vietnam to Western Airlines, and that was then bought by Delta, and both of them work at Delta, and I guess this is something that you all are bridging such a wonderful gap, because even 30, 40 years ago, transitioning out of the military, and oh my God, there's not a big demand, or there wasn't 40 years ago for dust-offs, mm-hmm. and there wasn't a big demand for deactivating landmines, and so you all have filled such a gap of that, and it's a big transition. Even if you were something before you went in the military, and most kids aren't. They might have been what we used to call a soda jerk, or they might have worked at McDonald's, or they might have done this or that. But they come out of the military, and it's a heck of a transition. If they're fortunate enough while they're in the military to go ahead and get an education and take advantage of the VA bill and get their education, but it's still, and I think you all are doing just an incredible job of helping folks coming out of the military transition into a job.
Well, thanks. We appreciate that. We take pride in who we are and what we do, and you have to recognize that I think that many companies and the business community as a whole, I think they've really come a long way over the last 2 decades since I've been in this industry. When I first started, there was I guess a bit of a reluctance to hire people right from the military, not because they didn't respect where we had been and what we've actually done, but I think that there was just a lack of education on how their skills, both tangible and intangible, can relate to their organizations and where they can make an impact. And there was a lot of, I'd say about 10 years or so ago, when after the last recession that we went through, 2009, where veteran unemployment numbers were, well into the double digits, especially, I guess I can say this, the kids, the first termers that maybe didn't have an education or a technical background, was sky high, 18 to 25-year-olds. I think a lot of people looked around and said, hey, we need to do something about this. And that's where a lot of businesses got together. There were a number of initiatives, the Joining Forces campaign that came out of the White House, about 10 years or so ago. A lot of those things really helped raise our awareness and really chip away at that number. So I think there's always room to improve, but it's I think the secret's out.
Coming out of Nam, there was a joke that only the mafia had a position for vets. There was a lot of demand for snipers. We're going to have to take a break, Mike, and we'll be back with Mike Arsenault right after this.
The disease of addiction is a life-altering challenge, not just for the person suffering its effects, but also for the family and friends who support and love the one caught in its grasp. What should be the course of treatment? Who is the best person to render treatment? And what is the best place to go for the care that is needed? We know that you want answers to these and many more questions. Call 770-696-9862 and speak to a representative of the Atlanta Healing Center. They can tailor a program specifically designed to address the needs of the person suffering with an addiction or give you guidance as to where that help may be found. Information is the key, and the trained staff at AHC is here to assist. If you wish, you can also get more information on the website located at www.atlantahealingcenter.com.
Quick Steaks, that's Q-U-I-K Steaks, are not just for surveyors. They are great for family and community gardens. Go online to www.quicksteak.com or contact your local land surveying supply dealer and get you a box of Quick Steaks. You'll love them every year when you plant your garden. Again, that's Quick Steaks, Q-U-I-K Steaks, the truly preferred way to stake and identify what's in your garden now.
You're listening to America's Web Radio on the AmericasBroadcastNetwork.com. Thank you for listening.
Oops. Anyway, things happen. Right now, we've got Mike Arsenault from a great company, Bradley Morris, Inc., and they are... I've never had a company be a hero, but you all rate right up there as heroes because you take care of veterans. And anybody that takes care of veterans, we happen to like, as you see, and we happen to support our flag, we support our government, we support our president, and anybody that hasn't served should serve, and they should recommend it for their children as well. So we do appreciate, I appreciate Shelby emailing me about the fact that it was coming up, and hopefully we'll be able to establish, you can go back and tell them whatever you want. Just lie like a rock. Tell them I wasn't near as obnoxious as I sounded, and I'm better looking than the photos, and just anything, and you could see me in a uniform that I could easily be a 5-star, but no. Anyway, I'm having a good time, and I hope you are too, Mike, and I appreciate you taking your time out of a busy day. I know you're probably setting up downtown, getting ready for the Atlanta Job Fair, which is?
Thursday, 11 o'clock Eastern Time until 3 o'clock.
11 to 3 this coming Thursday, June the 27th. So do they need to get there any earlier than that, or... Does it help if they do?
Doors will open prior to 11 o'clock. Anything happening prior to 11 will be set up in all the behind-the-scenes goings on. But there's an initial in brief that I think Rob Reckner will do to kick things off at 11. just some final words in terms of pep talk and logistics, and reminded folks some of the wave top bits that they can use to get the most out of the event.
And then Rob at 1 o'clock is going to be on America's Web Radio.
Okay.
And talking about how the job fair is going, and people coming down to it, and all of the, like I said, I want to flip it on the other side, sort of. And when Rob, if you talk to Rob, you might tell him that I'm going to ask him this, but I take my hat off, and if I ever wore one, but and salute the businesses that recognize the value of a veteran and a person that's been in the military. And I'm sure there are thousands of businesses that don't participate, as well as the thousands of businesses that do participate. And I salute the ones that participate and are willing. And then, let me tell you, it ain't taking a chance on a veteran. It's almost very good insurance if you hire a veteran. And I think that more and more companies should, the first place they look should be, if they're needing employees, is veterans. Yeah, you can't beat the honesty of a veteran. You can't beat the assurance that they're going to be there on time and dress, and they probably even know what a gig line is. And you laugh. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah. And that goes for men and women too. Speaking of women, most people think of the spouse as the woman, but in today's military, we have both men and women leaving their spouses behind to tend to the house, the family, and so forth. So you want to address spouses?
Sure. So there's really a bright line on this group, because we see it as another untapped reservoir of talent. About a quarter of military spouses are either unemployed or underemployed, and we really feel they're underutilized, and there's some limited employability by factors, geographic. The transfer of professional licenses, the fact that you're going to be in a place for 3 years and then, perhaps move to another location. And, as I mentioned earlier, we really feel like it's not just the man or the woman that puts on the uniform that goes to work on base on post every day who's serving. It's really the whole family that serves. The whole family will pick up and move for assignment, for training, or a permanent change of station. If the service member is deployed, who's going to run the operation back home on the home front. So what we really try to do, and how we support military spouses, is by these events, connect with us, come to these events, to engage with employers or engage with with organizations that might be able to help you in your professional development. Access to remote positions. Spouses, as well as some veterans that might be forced to or prefer to work from home. With our partnership with Google Cloud Talent Services, or Talent Solutions rather, there's a feature where someone can type in, work from home or remote work opportunities. And what that'll do is it'll pop up opportunities that enable you to do it from really wherever you live. If you have a computer, phone, and internet access, those are generally the tools that one's going to need, and just to bring awareness to these kinds of opportunities through our technology. Find a Job Friday, if it's a service available on Fridays every week from 11 to 1 Eastern on our LinkedIn page, on Recruit Military's LinkedIn page, where military spouses can get one-on-one help with their career search, and that's case studies, good news stories, question and answer sessions, or a deep dive on a particular area of emphasis. And we've seen some emphasis with some of the legislation that we follow as well. We're a bit agnostic when it comes to party and government. Just as long as they're doing things that have the veteran or the veteran and the military family front of mind. The last May, President Trump enacted the Military Spouse Employment Act, and that called on federal agencies and organizations to employ military spouses. And not long after that, he prompted all private sector organizations to follow suit and take a hard look at employing military spouses as well. To further support this particular act, just last week, Department of Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta was at a summit and talked about support for federal licensing reform. There's legislation right now, the professional licensed portability legislation, where states are making arrangements that professional licenses will transfer. So if you're a lawyer or a nurse or a teacher or a truck driver, it'll really cut through a lot of the bureaucratic red tape, so that your license that you might have that's good within the state of Georgia because you're stationed at Fort Stewart, if your next change of station is going to be at Fort Sill in Oklahoma, or you're going to Fort Carson, Colorado, that you can take your credentials, your license, your certifications, and have that recognized by that state as well, without having to go through the process of recertifying and extra credits and just the administrative burden that a lot of military spouses who are professionals are faced with today. So the idea that this kind of legislation, kind of capital F federal legislation, will put this as a recognized standard nationwide versus the patchwork programs that we have right now will really help out.
That is absolutely fantastic, because I know that has been a burden in many cases where the spouse is gone and maybe she's a dental hygienist and has to be, like you said, recertified. And so it really, what you're really saying is, or you said it, is that the government finally said, let's make it reciprocal across the country. And
well, the professional licensed portability legislation is moving its way through government now, but we certainly did get some positive language last week from the Labor Secretary Acosta when he was speaking during a summit that this is something that's going to be emphasized.
I love it, absolutely love it, and we've got a couple of minutes before the end of the show, which I hate. Will you come back? Where are you based out of? Or?
I'm in the Atlanta area as well. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So
good.
Yeah. So if you'd like to chat some other time, I'd be happy to come by.
Absolutely. And this is something that I think Kelly and Shelby and I will talk about since you're here. That's super. And you found that we're semi-legitimate, I guess.
Yes.
As a radio station goes. And by the way, we'll be replaying this a number of times, this show. We'll replay it today, and then it'll be archived on our website. And then you all can do, Kelly in marketing can do whatever she wants to with it, and we'll talk some more. So just briefly, Mike, where else are you coming out, or where else are the shows about to happen?
So this Thursday, we are also in Washington, D.C. We have an event in Miami. There's the one in Atlanta, and I believe, I should know this, but I believe we're also in Indianapolis as well. I believe there's one other location this Thursday, and I think it's Indianapolis. So I'm not sure what's going on this particular week. Last week we were in Detroit and in Houston. That was last Thursday.
Retirees generally sort of wind up retiring your military base so they can take advantage of the OX or whatever, or the commissary or whatever they want to take advantage of. So is that where you also sort of pinpoint as far as areas to do the job fairs?
Yes. So we have events throughout the course of the year in a number of military installations throughout the country.
That sound in the background is thunder, then we're fixing to get a heck of a storm. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's okay. So we do have a number of military installations where our job fairs are on base or on post. So Fort Bragg, Camp Lejeune, Camp Pendleton.
Oh, you've named some nasty ones.
Yeah, some pretty
Lejeune and Pendleton.
There's a lot of training going on at those places for sure. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But it's again like you and I were talking off mic. It's the biggest fraternity and sorority in the world. And there used to be a lot of, I say this, it was before I was in, but some competitiveness, and now it's about the Army-Navy football game. That's about as competitive as the branches get. And one branch now, I think there's more respect amongst the military than there's ever been. And there's a saying that I know you know well, and this is something that an employer, I'm sure, thinks about and looks at. I'm going to cover your back.
Yeah, so we see that in our company as well. I think that veterans or those who wore in the uniform before will naturally tend to kind of gravitate towards each other, because regardless of branch. But if you've been through similar types of experiences, similar types of training, and you're going to come from the same place, generally speaking, values-wise and culturally. So it tends to make sense when you see that happening.
Mike, thank you for coming in. I can assure you, you will be coming back if you'll grace us with your presence again. We've got a break. We got to get out of here. You've been listening to David's Pick on America's Web Radio. Stay tuned for more entertaining.
The Docs for Patient Care Foundation is your way to join the fight and become a member of an organization created by doctors for patients dedicated to fighting for your health.